look, one of the things, and this is what I thought was kind of interesting about Nick Fuentes and why I had him on the show, and I assume part of the reason you did too, right? Is like you just said, look, the kid is enormous. He is humongous. I don't, by the way, when I say kid, I don't mean that to be like condescending. That's how 40-year-olds talk about 20-year-olds. But so he's enormously talented. He's enormously huge at this point. And then I had planned the episode with him before this, but after the murder of Charlie Kirk, he really went out of his way to like hit all the right notes. And and to really be kind and Christian and to condemn violence and like I appreciated that. We were at kind of we're still at a dangerous moment in American history. Tensions are very high. We just witnessed the biggest political assassination of my lifetime. And also, this is somebody, I mean, you knew him better than me, but like I was friends with the guy. It's a very jarring thing when this happens. And it's a very jarring thing. First off, you watch your friend get publicly executed. Second of all, he's kind of in the same line of work as you. Like this is like a time that's kind of scary. Like I have very little children. I'm not prepared to get killed yet. And so for somebody who's supposed to be the biggest voice in the most radical right wing pocket of America, for him to be calling for like Christianity and peace and condemning violence, I was like, hey, that's awesome. And okay, so there's a lot of other things he's said that where he's really intentionally saying the most provocative, outlandish thing. And there's a whole lot of like humor and trolling that's kind of involved in it. Sometimes it's not exactly clear to say like, wait, do you really mean that? Do you really mean the craziest thing you just said? But look, also, I remember being in my 20s. There weren't smartphones and social media and podcasts back then, thank God. So I said a lot of wild shit in my 20s too, And so you almost go, okay, well, now you've found yourself in this situation where you're like bigger than you've ever been. And now you just watched your big political opponent get publicly executed in this horrible way. And now you're sitting down for conversations with me or conversations with Tucker, and we're kind of going like, hey, what do you really believe here, though? What do you really mean by this or that? And I am sorry, but anyone who objectively watched either one of those or both of those podcasts, it is just undeniably clear that me and you, this is just objectively true. Me and you did not move 1 inch on our views on what we've been saying the whole time. And in fact, look, when you said the thing to Fuentes about, hey, we're both Christians, like I went at it from more of a libertarian perspective and you from more of a Christian perspective, which makes sense. But I basically said to him at one point, like, you're telling me I say it's the Israel lobby and the Israeli government, but I'm not saying it's the Jews. Well, what do you mean? Let's talk about this. And he kind of conceded that like, oh yeah, this doesn't apply to all Jews. And then when you said it to him, he kind of conceded like, yes, I'm also a Christian who has that same worldview. And okay, so look, I'm not even saying, is Nick Fuentes moderating? I don't know exactly. Maybe he's just clarifying, but if there's anyone who is moderating, it was him. And if he is moderating at all, I think that's great. I think that'd be him doing the right thing. I would rather him come a little bit, in that direction. And again, what's kind of interesting to me about it, right, is that look, I kind of tried a couple times during my podcast with him, as I think you saw it. And there were a couple times where I'd be like, hey, okay, well, we agree on this. Let's talk about this. Now let's talk about something where we don't agree. Let's get into this. At one point, I just brought up the Holocaust. Like, are you saying, do you really think the Holocaust didn't happen? Because like, we could talk about that. Like, let's get into it. And not in a like, I'm offended way, but like, no, let's actually talk about the history of it or whatever. And he didn't really want to argue about it. He was kind of like, yeah, no, I get your point. It probably did happen, Now, those clips aren't circulating. Now, all of these, now think about it, right? Think about the fact that the people who say they want to fight anti-Semitism so much, they aren't circulating the clips where Nick, on my podcast, explicitly rejected racial hatred. On your podcast, when he agreed with you that Christians can't believe in collective guilt. People don't want, Ben Shapiro's not clipping that for his show today for the greatest hits. No, they're going back to all the worst things he said. And I think this should tell all of us something. They actually prefer that. Well, they prefer that he be a neo-Nazi so that they can attach him to you, so that they can argue to cancel you and argue that you're not a part of this GOP coalition, rather than saying it'd be better if we at least left the door open for this guy to maybe reflect on some of this stuff and maybe reject some of the things that we find a little bit. Look, Nick Fuentes is never going to be a bitch. He's never going to go out here and beg for Ben Shapiro's forgiveness, which he never should, because who the hell is Ben Shapiro? But like, if he is maturing and he is clarifying or moderating, isn't it something that they all are allergic to that?
Of course. And in general, they're, what they fear, and not all, but let me just, can I say one thing? The thing that bothers me maybe most about torquing up the rhetoric to the point where you're calling people Nazis who aren't Nazis, very anti-Nazi, always have been, will continue to be. I will never become what they call me. That's part of the game, right. Of course, make you into the hater they say you are. And I'm not going to do that. I pray about it every single day, and that's not going to happen to me. I will be cheerful until I die, no matter how I die. So there's that. But what's so interesting is they do not want just a straightforward conversation about what they believe. They do not. And so it's often I have heard, like, if I'm being totally honest, about a bird hunting trip for the last 2 days, like off grid, but I'm getting a lot of this all at once. People are mad at me. And apparently one of the criticisms is that I went in and spoke to Ted Cruz, and I was so tough on Ted Cruz, but I was so nice to Fuentes. And it's like, I'm just trying to think about the Ted Cruz interviews. I was actually very polite to Cruz. And I just wanted him to explain what he thought. And like, what is AIPAC, and why is it okay to take all this money from them? And they're not a foreign lobby. And he immediately, and I mean immediately, called me an anti-Semite. And I really wasn't expecting. I've known Ted since long before he was a senator. I have very mixed feelings about him and his life, but I never thought he would call me an anti-Semite because I asked him about campaign contributions, but he did immediately. And he did because he didn't want to have that conversation, rather than just saying, they're lobbying for the Israeli government. Maybe they should be registered. I would still accept their money if they're registered. Like, who cares? He wouldn't say that. He was like, shut up. He tried to end the conversation through a verbal attack. And Fuentes, whatever you think of him, hey, Fuentes, what do you think? He would just tell you. Now, people are choosing not to believe what he said, and it wasn't a perfect interview. I've never conducted a perfect interview. I felt pretty good about it, to be honest. But all these people are like, oh, you should have this shit on that. Well, interview him yourself. You're not my assignment editor. Do it yourself. There are a couple things I do regret, I'll just say. He said, I love Stalin. I was like, so shocked by that, as someone who spent his whole life studying Stalin. It's actually one of my true areas of personal interest, know a lot about the topic. How could you like Stalin, But I didn't get back to that.
Well, Tucker, I mean, at the very least, can't we count on the Jew haters to be good on Joseph Stalin? I mean, I would think that, like, it's like meeting a commie who was for the war in Iraq or something like that. Like, come on, we could at least count on you for that.
Weird to hear Ben Shapiro, because, of course, all the neocons are very exercised, because I have said, and I sincerely believe, very anti-Hitler, very anti-Nazi, but Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill supported Joseph Stalin, who created was the author of the greatest genocide against Christians ever in history. And we sent huge amounts of money, billions and billions and billions, adjusted for inflation, to Joseph Stalin and war material. We were on Stalin's side during the war. And my view is, I'm not for that. I'm against Hitler. I'm against the Nazis. But when you get to a place where you're sending money to Stalin, I'm out. And they're like, oh, you're a Holocaust denier. What? What do you do with the Holocaust? I don't want to send money to Stalin. But they demand that you be happy that we sent money to Stalin, but now they're offended by Stalin. Whatever. I guess I should have said something. I just was so overwhelmed with other things. I didn't. But I just want to say at the outset, because this has been weighing on me, I did say something that I really regret saying that I didn't fully mean. I said it because I was mad, which is always when I say things I don't really mean. When I get pissed, my wife's always telling me this. I was snippy and I didn't explain it. And I said something to the effect of, I despise Christian Zionists. And I'm just sorry that I said that, because I don't. I'm mad at a certain kind of thinking. Some of the nicest people I know are Christian Zionists, actually. If you're in a car crash, they would save you. If you needed someone to watch your bank account, they wouldn't steal from you. They're like really good people and sweet people. I want to be very specific quickly about what I was talking about. In at least a couple of different occasions, the Israeli government bombed churches in Gaza and killed a bunch of Christians. And not an accident, of course. I mean, this is like a very high-tech military with precision. I mean, they, gave pagers with bombs in them to Hezbollah. So like this is a military that a national defense institution that understands what it's doing. They didn't accidentally bomb 2 churches and kill these Christians, and they never apologized for it. And so I brought this up with a couple of Christian leaders, and including the Speaker of the House, and said, like, what is, how could, what, we're paying to bomb churches? Because we're paying for it. And the response I got from every single one was, the Bible commands us to support Israel. And I said, so Jesus is telling us that we need to get on board with murdering Christians? Is that what you're saying? And they basically were just like, shut up. And I found that extremely, as a Christian, extremely upsetting. And I've never kind of gotten over that, but I should have said that. That's what I was talking about specifically. We cannot support the murder of innocents. I don't care what the pretext is. That is not allowed in our religion. And if it is, then it's not my religion. That's not what the New Testament says at all. It's not even a close approximation of what it says. There's no justification for that in the New Testament, period. So I am distressed. I don't hate. I shouldn't have said despise, but I'm very distressed about that. And that's specifically what I was talking about. So I just want to apologize sincerely for not being clearer.